Every year at Congregation, UBC has the honor of bestowing honorary degrees upon individuals who, in the opinion of the university community, have fit the criteria of excellence and eminence in their chosen field. This occurs at graduation ceremonies to be an inspiration to you, our graduates. Professor Dr. Mary Claire King is one such individual, and I invite her to step to my left to be in front of you to receive our highest honor, our honorary degree. Mr. Chancellor, through her scientific endeavors, Mary Claire King has made a unique, an extraordinary combination of contributions to studies of common inherited diseases and to the identification of victims of human rights atrocities. She is a renowned geneticist and the American Cancer Society Research Professor of Medicine and Genome Sciences at the University of Washington, an institution with which we have many interactions. For more than 40 years, the primary focus of her work has been to understand inherited predisposition to breast and ovarian cancer. In 1990, she proved the existence of the gene BRCA1, which is responsible for inherited breast and ovarian cancer among many young women. Since that time, identification of women at extremely high risk of breast and ovarian cancer due to inherited mutations in that gene, and also in numerous so-called sister genes, has become standard practice in oncology. The impact of her work has been enormous. In addition, the approach that she developed to identify the gene has since proven extremely valuable in the study of many other genetic diseases and conditions. Her research team was also responsible for developing and deploying DNA technology for identification of victims of human rights abuses on 6 continents in collaboration with the UN Forensic Anthropology Team and the Hague Tribunal, and for providing DNA identification services for the US Army and the UN's War Crimes Tribunals. She has also worked independently with numerous human rights organizations, such as Physicians for Human Rights and Amnesty International, to identify missing people in numerous countries in the Americas, as well as in Rwanda, the Balkans, and the Philippines. She has been recognized as a member of many of the world's most prominent scientific academies and associations, and as a recipient of numerous awards, including the National Medal of Science from the President of the United States. Mr. Chancellor, in recognition of her numerous and remarkable contributions, her record of service to genetic research and to international human rights and justice, I ask you to confer the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa upon Mary Claire King.
By authority of the Senate of this university, I confer upon you, Mary Claire King, the title and degree Doctor of Science honoris causa. Congratulations.
Graduates of the class of 2018, It gives me great pleasure to now have Dr. King say a few words to you. Please give her a round of applause.
Good morning. As your Chancellor said, it's been 45 years since I finished my PhD and I haven't left school yet. In this time, I've come to realize that the culture of scientific life has special features that make it irresistible. Having come from a family without an academic background, let alone a background in science, and thus having learned the ways of this culture as I grew up in it, it occurs to me that as the parents and grandparents and brothers and sisters and friends of these new graduates, you might like a little orientation to what this world is about. In other words, what have these people gotten themselves into? What do they do all day? So here is one very anecdotal view of our world. The defining feature of life in science is that the people in it want to be here. We enjoy this life. Science is fun. Genetics and genomics is enormous fun. Those of us doing science nowadays are extraordinarily lucky to be working in a revolutionary period. It's irresistible not to succumb to a sense of unlimited horizons. Every result, regardless of organism or gene or pathway or model, is part of a whole story that will eventually make sense to us. The lesson of evolution is that the natural world is ordered and that people can figure it out. In our science, there are hard problems and incredibly hard problems, but there are very few impossible problems. Of course, the only way solutions to these problems come about is by open, unrestrained criticism of new ideas. But criticism of ideas is coupled with respect for the person having it. The idea may be scientifically immature. Most ideas are most of the time. But the person with the idea has to be mature as a person to be able to reveal a not fully formed and therefore fragile notion to their fellow students and teachers, who will, of course, immediately jump all over it. As mentors, we try very hard to let our students see our regard for them, to see our respect for their ideas. I know we're not perfect at this, but I think students understand that we take them seriously, that we believe in them, both as our students and as the future of the field, and are proud of them. Criticism of students by teachers is certainly reciprocated. One of my graduate students and I, then graduate students and I, were teaching a course together more than 25 years ago in Shanghai, shortly after the opening of China to Westerners. We developed a routine in which I would explain a concept for a few minutes, and then he would expand on the same point in Chinese, emphasizing bits where either my English or the genetics hadn't been clear. But one time, well into the course, after one of my verbal paragraphs, he said nothing. I looked at him. Perhaps I'd been perfectly clear, but no. My then graduate student looked at the class, looked at me, and said in English, "There's really nothing I can do with this. You've got it all wrong." I need not mention that everyone in the class understood that comment perfectly. It's an indication of our worldwide value system, even for two cultures that 25 years ago were quite isolated from each other, that everybody laughed at me. I've mentioned the fun of doing biology and the critical but accepting life of our community. The last feature of our life that I'd like to suggest to you is that the scientist is a citizen of the world. Being a scientist provides a view of the world that is unique and that imposes responsibilities on those of us lucky enough to be part of it. Anywhere we go in the world, we are welcomed in local universities. Anywhere we go, we meet new friends, at most at 1 or 2 degrees of separation. We take for granted the internationality of our world and the irrelevance of nationality or race or the politics of one's government. However, we'd be blind not to acknowledge that we're part of the wider world and that sometimes we must address events of that world. At these times, the technologies of our own fields are useful. For me, using genetics to identify kidnapped children was an obvious example. Probably more often, it's not the science per se that's applicable, but rather our insistence on common sense in public life. We have a long-practiced ability to detect nonsense. We are in close contact with a large network of well-informed people from all over the world. In crises, our subculture makes excellent use of those networks. Internet interconnectedness is a major force for democratic change in all parts of the world. It has become impossible to tell bright young people utter nonsense and to expect them to believe it, or to be eternally patient with those responsible for it. Friendships that you all have made in school can and will impact events beyond science in ways that none of us can now predict. So I leave you with 3 wishes, like a fairy godmother. First, may you have enormous fun and good fortune in your chosen field. Second, may you always have, in parallel with your life in science, a side life in the other of C.P. Snow's 2 cultures. Read history, or play an instrument, or sing, or dance, or enjoy a play. Third, may you be fully immersed in our society so your brains and your abilities are useful. Notice that these 3 wishes are not bestowed from on high. They are completely under your control. You have the freedom and autonomy to choose your wishes and to choose the paths you will follow in fulfilling them. We wish you the greatest pleasure in doing so. Thank you.